Welcome back to Exotic Car Play Place, everybody. Mark here again today to do a comparison between BMW and Audi. Which one is in fact more reliable? Which brand holds the reliability reign or crown, if you will? Well, today we're down at a couple of the dealerships. We're going to look at some of the BMWs, walk through. I'm going to point out to you some of the key areas that some of the models have issues with, and then we'll hit the Audi brand as well, and we'll point out some of the specific issues with a few of those models as well. And at the end, we're going to summarize kind of the overall feel of which brand is more reliable and which brand is less reliable. So let's get rolling into some of these right now. So firstly, we have an X4 35i. This one has the N55 engine. So what's the N55? That is the single turbocharged twin scroll inline 6 3-liter engine that's packed underneath the hood there. This produces about 300 horsepower, makes this car go very, very briskly. But this actually was improved vastly upon the N54, which preceded this engine. And these generally aren't too bad in comparison with a car that has the N54 engine, just like this. So here we have a wonderful early, this is a 2007 335i, produces 300 horsepower and about 300 pound-feet of torque. This has the N54 engine, which is the twin turbo straight 6 3-liter engine that again was the original version of turbocharging on the 6-cylinder that BMW produced. Now these cars had a lot of problems, from high pressure fuel pump to bad injectors, wastegate rattle that you'd hear on the turbos over on that side. You'd also have the oil filter housing would leak. You have electric water pump and thermostat problems that would leak. Always needed repairs every 80,000 to 100,000 kilometers. Lots of problems. Now, if you get past the problems, these cars were great to drive. They had excellent performance and they were a lot of fun, but they didn't come without their issues. So this is the N54, one of the worst cars that you can find in the BMW lineup for reliability. So here is our next candidate. This one here is a 328i. This is a latest generation, the F30 if you will. Now a great car, drives well, very economical, and overall has decent performance considering its 2-liter 4-cylinder capacity. However, these cars, because they had extended service intervals by BMW, that's right, BMW extended the service intervals for oil changes just to attract new customers, so you didn't feel like you were constantly putting money into servicing. As a result of doing that, other things suffered. Oil-related issues. For example, we had timing chain problems. They were a problem with these cars in some of them. You had oil pump problems and low oil pressure issues here. So certainly its share of engine-related issues in the N20 engine, which is the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine packed underneath that hood. And then what do we have here? We have an X5 with the diesel engine. Now the diesel engine is arguably one of the best foundational engines in the lineup of BMW. However, with the diesel engines, because in today's modern society, in today's industry, everything has to be emissioned out to the max. And as a result, the engine is very, very well built, designed, and reliable, generally speaking, in these vehicles. However, what's not so reliable are things like the DEF fluid heater tank. You've got the diesel particulate filter found underneath there. If they plug off, that's a big dollar item in the terms of singles, almost to double-digit thousands of dollars to fix. You have EGR valves, EGR valve heaters. Of course, you have other related issues like glow plugs and modules. They were very expensive to fix, and there was a lot of problems that could have went wrong as a result of all the emission stuff that gets strapped onto these X5 diesels. And here we have the latest generation of BMW's illustrious M4. S55 engine, that's right, 3 liters in displacement. Turbocharged engine produces well over 400 ponies and a whole schwack of torque. Now, these are actually very dependable engines for the most part. They actually take up with a lot of abuse, put up with a lot of abuse. The trannies are very reliable. The electronics are questionable, of course, because they've got some of the more advanced features, newer iDrive systems and such. But where there's a little bit of a question and concern, there were some complaints on connecting to the Apple Play audio system in here. The interface isn't that great. There was also some problems here with leaks and whistling noises and the seal around the windows. Some people were complaining that the seal around the window would make a lot of noise and whistle in the wind, and there would be issues and complaints with water ingress and just whistling noises. Not only that, with that S55 engine, did you hear? there's actually a crank hub issue. So there's hardware in there that's holding part of that whole crank assembly in there. And there's issues with that hardware backing out, coming loose, and allowing movement within the engine, and a part of the engine that you don't want movement. Now this isn't consistent. It doesn't seem to be affecting every car. It doesn't even be affecting a large number of cars, but there is a small percentage of vehicles that are seeing similar issues with the crank hub failures in these engines. Generally, as a rule though, very dependable for an M car, far better than the E90 and 92 before it, and certainly better than anything before that. So what do we have here? An absolutely stunning 650 Grand Coupe. 650, this one's an X-Drive. Absolutely beautiful vehicle. If you can take a look, check out the rims on that bad boy. Grand Coupe. Absolutely stunning spec. We've got red interior wrapped beneath this wonderful blue exterior. Now, the only thing with these, other than a few electronic glitches that happens along the way with some of these BMWs, is the high pressure fuel pump. Now know this, with the modern era of all these vehicles going direct injected, you can expect more and more of these failures being a consistent part of what you're going to see with many BMWs, a lot of manufacturers, Audis and Benzes and everything, that use direct injection. They use a high pressure fuel pump. They push fuel at a higher rate, at a high pressure, and that takes a toll. There's more heat, but the fuel has to be clean as well, and there's a higher tendency for them to fail. When they fail, that part is big bucks. Yikes. Now what do we have here? We have the 440. Beautiful vehicle, no doubt about it, absolutely wonderful. It's also a Grand Coupe, but in the 4 Series car. A little bit smaller than what we just saw in the 6 Series. Being it's a 440, this vehicle now actually carries the B58 engine. That's right, tucked underneath the hood here is that beautiful inline 6 3-liter turbocharged motor that replaced the N55, which replaced the N54. This is the latest and the greatest for non-M cars and turbocharging of a 6-cylinder engine. These are actually very reliable, other than a few related issues where they were mated up to a manual gearbox and a little bit of excess heat. These were honestly quite reliable. This B58 is also the engine that they're using in the brand new Toyota Supra. They're now using it in a lot of the modern day cars that are 40 designations. You'll find the 40 designation like in the M340i or the X3 M40i. That's a similar engine in here as what they're using in those modern day vehicles. Excellent engine, did a great job of replacing the previous N54 and N55 turbocharged 6s. Now, so we're speaking mainly of newer BMWs. Not all of you guys want to buy a brand new 2018 or 2019. Some of you guys are wondering what the reliability of the older cars are. Well, let's summarize it by saying a lot of the older cars had issues with electronics, vanos, especially the double Vano systems were a problem in many cars. If you looked at a lot of the M cars, for example, some of the earlier M5s, for sure some of the earlier M3s, rod bearings were very consistent with a lot of those issues as being problematic. So generally as a rule, there were a lot of issues in a lot of the older BMWs as well. But now in the advent of a lot of newer technology and learnings through research and development, BMW is learning partially from some of their mistakes. Now, there is some repetition in terms of mistakes made, of course. So what you're going to find is a transition from mechanical issues that you traditionally saw in the older cars to more electronic type issues. Now, mechanically, the cars are becoming a little more sound. The only issues seem to be related to extending service intervals now on oil changes. But for the most part, most of the modern day BMWs seem to be a bit more dependable than they were back in the day. So now let's review some of the Audis and then we'll make a comparison at the end. Well, what a spanky looking car. And then we have another RS5, but this is the older generation with the V8. So which one do you guys like? But anyway, let's talk about reliability. Let's move. And so here we have a new generational A4. Beautiful 2-liter turbocharged engine, direct competitor with everything that BMW is doing today. For example, the BMW 328 or the 330s also share a 2-liter turbocharged engine, all very close competitors. But we already spoke of the BMW having issues related to timing chains and some oiling issues and pump and oil pump problems. How does the Audi stack up? The only thing really notable about this generation is the FSI or TFSI engines, essentially the injected engines where they have direct injection. High pressure systems, of course, creates extra carbon fouling. So carbon fouling is commonly known on these cars, specifically in the intake runners and valves as well. Lots of carbon fouling on the intake system that you had to get that decarbonized or decarboned. Now, if we're talking about the older generation A4s, there can be other issues related to oil leaks from the camshaft chain tensioners. You've got issues on the valve cover gaskets with leaks as well. Ignition coil, wires, spark plugs, typical things that are more or less maintenance related. Rainwater can actually plug off in certain drain points, which can cause rust. You also have issues with vacuum leaks, oxygen sensors, and catalytic converter faults, essentially. So high pressure fuel pump is also a relatable issue on, generational cars of a few years back. And then we have the wonderful Q7. Full-size, 7-passenger SUV, very practical. Lots of people love these for their versatility. Now, they also had their issues. For example, cold start, rough idle. They had to do an upgrade on the PCM or the computer, essentially, to take that out of the system. Then you had a check engine light for the knock sensor. That also had to be sorted out. That was another problem with these cars. And you could actually get uneven ride height. That was another problem where the height was off, so they had to do an update on the pressure holding valve because that would actually relieve on one side or the other and you'd get uneven holding power, and essentially the vehicle would be very uneven or unstill. So again, computer related, ride height problems, knocking and oxygen sensor related problems. Generally not a huge issue. A lot of them were updates, but there was a few problems with the Q7 as well. And then we have the wonderful A6, not without its faults either. How about ABS control unit, thermostats that leak or allow it to overheat. The digital display would sometimes crap out on these cars, and again, a very expensive fix. And also a check engine light for a faulty torque converter, which is basically bolted there to between the transmission and the engine. The torque converter would fail, you get a check engine light. Again, had to be sorted, not a cheap fix by any means. But otherwise, a very beautiful vehicle all the way around. Can't go wrong with the wonderful A6. And some notables on the older cars, some of the older ones, not too old of course, some of the generational ones, is issues with leaks at the camshaft chain tensioner housing, as well as the valve cover gaskets. There was erratic signal switch operation. That was a problem with some of these cars, as were vacuum leaks, which caused CELs or check engine lights as well. Some other issues that you would find with the A6. And how can we actually forget? Audi's the one that brought reliability back to the Lamborghini brand. For example, the R8, which is more or less a Huracan or Gallardo, and that's what brought Lamborghini back into place with reliability, made the car more reliable, more affordable, and easier on the pocketbook. So which is the reigning champ for reliability, BMW or Audi? Well, that begs the question, of course, and I'm trying to be as objective as I can, but if I can summarize, there's a main reason why Audi is the more reliable brand, in my opinion. Now, BMW is getting better and they're moving ahead in terms of predicted reliability, and they're moving up the ranks for Consumers Reports predicted reliability, and as a matter of fact, they rank higher than Audi. But traditionally, BMW has suffered from a lot of unique, interesting mechanical failures, rod bearing problems, Vanos, variable valve timing issues, a lot of mechanical issues that have really crippled the company back in the day. Now they're getting back on their feet. BMWs have a lot of very reliable vehicles. Unfortunately, they had some models that really killed their reputation, some of the 7 Series and even some of the M cars with rod bearing problems and Vanos issues. So those really hurt the company, whereas Audi, on the other hand, is more or less often like a Volkswagen. There's many shared components. If you look at the A Series, S Series, the A4s and 3s and 4s and 5s and 6s, a lot of those are actually shared with a lot of Volkswagen components. Sure, they're restyled, rebadged, but in a lot of cases, many of the parts are very similar. And actually, what that means is mass production, research and development is more complete, less unique one-off designs. And it's that unique design in the BMW world that, yes, makes the vehicles exceptionally great to drive because they're designed as unique one-offs and they're very focused on the design and the elements of how they're manufactured and how they want them to drive and what are the dynamics all about. But Audi, on the other hand, does it more in terms of manufactured mass production cars. For example, Volkswagen and Audi sharing parts makes it very reliable. So in short, both manufacturers build exceptionally great cars. They look great, they go good, and honestly are relatively similar in terms of reliability. Now it comes down to a personal choice. If you're edging it out, again, Audi's the winner there. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, make sure to hit that video link in the bottom here. That's gonna take you to another one of my video reviews talking about reliability again. You're gonna love it. You're gonna wanna click on that and check it out. So hope to see you guys in the next one. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.